Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here. We are continuing our preview of SEC teams and their openers. Today we get to Auburn and Mercer. That one is going to be 7 Eastern Saturday night, September the 3rd in Auburn, Alabama. No line on this game. Had they played last year, Jeff Sagarin had Auburn as a 30-point favorite in that one. Mercer went 7-3 last year, its best season ever. Its one FBS game was against Alabama, which it lost 48-14 and was surprisingly competitive. You were seeing Mercer ranked in some preseason FCS top 25s. And then there's Auburn, which outside of, Hawaii, Oklahoma, had one of maybe the craziest offseason of all major college football teams a year ago. I think Auburn just looking forward to playing some football at this point. Blake?
Yeah, no, just get on the field and stop thinking about everything that happened in the offseason. I think that's the goal here. And yeah, I think this is, like we always say, it's always something when you play a team that, is an FCS top 25 type team. You're not just talking about a team that's just going to roll the ball out there and play. You're talking about a team that's built up some momentum as a program. And like you said, 7-3, best season ever last year. And those kind of things, I think, and you've got a team that's going to already be playing a game. Like you mentioned, they played Morehead State the week before. So maybe a chance to work out some things heading into obviously a much bigger game against Auburn. But yeah, this is, we'll talk about each side of the ball for each team, but you would think this could be something where maybe Auburn gets a little frustration out in week one and is able to kind of do what they want here. I think especially with probably on the line of scrimmage. I think we'll talk about that, but I think that's probably one of the bigger keys to this game. But yeah, Auburn just want to play a game. I think if you're an Auburn fan, you'd want to play it today maybe and just get this thing started and just get out there given the kind of off season it's been. So.
Well, Mercer's defense last year was fairly good at its level, allowed a little under 23 points a game. Auburn, as we do this, we're about 3 weeks out from the opener. Got a 3-man competition for quarterback, TJ Finley, who was there a year ago, Zach Calzada, who was at Texas A&M, and Robbie Ashford. And I think the consensus is Calzada should win the job, but we don't know yet. But I don't know how much that's going to matter. You would think Auburn would just run the ball. It's got 2 really good backs, Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter, who had a really, really nice year as the backup a year ago. Mercer allowed 3.9 yards a rush last year, but it didn't exactly play a team that can pound you the way that Auburn will. And I think that's really, Blake, what Auburn probably will and should do under the circumstances.
Yeah, you'll see that a lot this season, I think, but especially in a game like this, I think it's just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, and like I said a minute ago, I think that's where the line of scrimmage comes into play here, where you would think that Auburn should be able to kind of impose its will, especially on both sides of the ball. I think at the line of scrimmage, so I think that's going to be something very important in a game like this, and again, I think having that as a strength of that duo at running back. It's just going to be something that Auburn will be able to lean on. And as we know, too, that's going to be important for the defense, which we'll talk about in a second, to where if you can just control a game like that with your running game, that will give Auburn, I think, a lot of chances for success. Although, as we know, you still got to have some consistency at quarterback. You won't be able to do that in every game. But I think this is one where they could be able to, as long as their defense plays well, they should be able to run the ball a lot. And I think that will be probably the best recipe for success because, again, we know they'll probably still be working out some things with their passing game. You would expect that. So I do think that's something where, look, I don't think it's much of a surprise of what Auburn's strategy is going to be. And when you have 2 very capable running backs and guys who we've seen be able to make plays, consistently, I think that is something where that has to be your go-to, I think, and your approach in this game. So.
Okay, when Mercer's got the ball, the Bears averaged almost 32 points a game a year ago. Quarterback Fred Payton returns. Wide receiver Ty James is back. They were both good players for Mercer a year ago. Auburn's defense lost some guys to the NFL, including Roger McCrary, who was one of the better corners in the league, really, the last 3 years. But familiar names, Derek Hall is back. Colby Wooden, Marcus Harris, Owen Papo. Some of those guys weren't necessarily expected to return. Could have gone to the league and did not. Auburn changes defensive coordinators after Derek Mason left for Oklahoma State, but I think there's a good bit of talent on that side of the ball. I mean, Auburn almost always has guys in the front seven that's just in.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Is like I said, I think the size and the speed and those kind of things certainly matter in games like this, or they can. We know, what you're recruiting at an SEC level and those kind of things. So I think that's something that you will certainly have an eye on here if you're Auburn and you're trying to get the pressure going up against this offense, which like you said, I think it's a very, and we saw it last year against Alabama, like it's a very sort of different type of offense. And I think that's something too that, as you're preparing for a game like this, I think that will actually be a luxury for Auburn having Mercer play that Morehead State game the week before, because it gives you fresh data to use, and a fresh
Mm.
look at this team rather than just, okay, let's look back at last year and those kind of things. So I think that's something that will actually help Auburn here going up against a team like that. When you just look at the style, I think that they're going to play, and just kind of, I think it's, well, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but I visually remember this game and I tried to go back and look at it. I feel like there's some kind of option involved where it's those kind of aspects of the offense. Um, so I think that's something that you will be able to see here, and I think Auburn getting pressure will be very important. And again, I just think they'll be able to do that given what they have up front and those kind of things with the defense. So yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like we said, Auburn's clearly the favorite in this game. But if you're trying to pick apart certain aspects, I think getting pressure here for Auburn will be very important to kind of disrupt what Mercer wants to do. So
Look, I don't think Mercer's going to win this game, okay? But if I'm Auburn, I don't want to get into a close game at some point in the second half because of all the pressure on that coaching staff with the offseason, the way that fan base is, and it turned on that staff pretty quickly in a lot of ways. I think if you're Auburn, you want to avoid turnovers, control the tempo, get out a couple touchdowns in front, and be able to kind of coast to a win late. Because if that one gets interesting late, just the backdrop of all that Auburn went through in the offseason, I think that starts getting magnified perhaps.
by the way, I was trying to think of it. Triple option is what I
Yeah.
was thinking. So it's that sort of approach. And I was looking back at some post game comments last year when they played Mercer. And I was like, I remember this game, but I just can't
Yeah.
remember exactly.
And that's not something you see a lot as an
No,
SEC team. You may
well,
go
and
years without seeing that.
that's the thing, is even having that game the week before against Morehead State, that gives you a look at it. And of course, they've had the entire offseason to kind of study what Mercer has done there under that coaching staff. But still, it's not something until you're actually out on the field that's really that easy to prepare for. So that is something here where, you look at it. That's why I said, getting that pressure, being able to disrupt things at the line. We know that can kind of throw off that type of scheme. If you can just kind of get that pressure up front, that limits your options a little bit offensively. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think it's one where I would expect Auburn to come out and really just, like I said, I think be able to sort of flex your strength here in a game like this where you want to run the ball down their throat, and you've got the ability to do so. And I think that's going to be very important because it is. I mean, it's a team that's going to run this option style, and they'll want to try to do the same thing. In a lot of instances, we're just approach it in somewhat of a similar fashion, different schemes, of course. But so yeah, I think this is. I don't anticipate this being a high scoring game. I think that's probably, I don't know. Again, we don't have the number, and I don't know when no over under or anything, but for some reason, I just don't anticipate this being very high scoring. I think this will be a game that, kind of plays out depending on how each team can sort of approach things rushing wise and maybe from that aspect. So we'll see.
Yeah, Auburn wins, but I think this might be less than the 30 or so points that Jeff Saggern would have put it at a year ago.
Yeah, sounds about right to me. I think they'll take care of business, but yeah, on the score, who knows, depending on how things get started. So.
All right, we're previewing all SEC games for week 1, so be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of those, and we will see you again really soon.